Less than a year has passed since Kotaro has defeated the evil cult known as Gorgon, and is now living in peace with his new job as a helicopter pilot, and enjoys the company of his employer, Mr. Sahara, and his warm, loving family. In addition, he has a new girlfriend, Reiko, a professional photographer. Unfortunately, his peaceful life is put on hold when a new threat, known as the Intergalactic Confederation of Planets— wrong one. I mean, the Crisis Empire, led by General Jack, invades the planet Earth. At first, General Jack and his minions want Kotaro and, with his powers as Kamen Rider Black, to join their evil army. But Kotaro, of course, does not bow down to their evil will. Cast into space and exposed to the sun, the Sunstone, the source of Kamen Rider Black's powers, now is rejuvenated, and he's now more powerful than ever, and he becomes Kamen Rider Black RX. Along with his new form, he can become Robo Rider, fueled by his sadness, and the Bio Rider form fueled by his fury. Each form gives him distinct strengths and abilities to combat the various threats that the Crisis Empire throws at him. Alright, to start off with this review, even though Kamen Rider Black, the previous installment, was much darker, the darkness is very toned down for RX. There's a lot more comedy added to it, but not to the campy extent of Kaku Ranger or the wackiness of Car Ranger. And if anything, the tone is kind of more in tune to Jew Ranger and brings more kid-friendly atmospheric feel to the show. But it doesn't go as silly and wacky or as what the hell as Saban's Masked Rider, that's for sure. To be fair, I can't really say that's necessarily a bad thing, since Kamen Rider's target audiences are children. It will have its silliness, but it doesn't overall hurt the tone of the show, and still has its own exciting elements, and will have its darker moments, which should keep older audiences interested, especially for those who have already seen Black. Do you need to see the first season to get into and understand this series? Apart from 3 episodes around the first half, you really don't. It tells its own distinct story, and the way Kotaro is presented in this series is still consistent to who he was in the first season. Kotaro is still the same guy. He cares about the people around him, he is selfless, he cares about the planet. I say the way he develops most in this series is as a leader. In Black, he was much more solo, who had help every now and then, but as the series progresses, his supporting cast grows, and they fight along with him until the end. Kotaro in the end of the first series ends, he's really lonely. And I think Kotaro learns he doesn't have to be alone all the time in this series. He allows his less powerful friends to fight along with him this time. I sort of do have an issue with how Reiko develops. Her development is, the way she's developed is forced in my opinion, especially with what she went through in the first half of the series and how she was portrayed. I would elaborate on my issues with her development, but it would force me to bring out some spoilers. And I really like the Kasumi Joe character. He's played by Koyama Rikiya, the voice of Takumura from Hajime no Ippo, Jubei from Ninja Scroll, and Taiga from Yuga Gotoku 4, or Yakuza 4. He is a comic relief character, but he contributes a lot to the series. But I don't think the more comedic elements is bad enough to turn people away if you want something dark, especially from Joe. The villains are decent themselves, but felt a little bit more gimmicky in a Super Sentai kind of way in comparison to the Gorgon priests. The Gorgon I thought were better villains and more frightening. Plus, the lieutenants and General Jack's army, there's too many of them, and they don't really get that much action time towards the ending, and it's mostly Maribaron who is leading on the field. Considering they come from outer space, the monsters in comparison to the first season are more diverse, and they can be more based on inanimate objects as opposed to forcibly mutated experimented animals. But they do bring their own threat and danger, but not to the extent that Gorgon brought in my own opinion. The ending and conclusion is pretty dark and makes everything worth it. I also like how a certain important element related to what leads up to the ending is related to my home state of Arizona, which I thought was really cool for me. So I leave the story and characters at a 9 out of 10. The action is a lot more aerial this time around. You see a lot more jumping and trying to fight in midair. His updated RX kick is a more spinning missile dropkick and is pretty cool in a luchador kind of way. Along with RX's new modes, it gives him new distinct ways of fighting. As Robo Rider, naturally his movements are very influenced by RoboCop. The way he walks, how he's more invulnerable, and that he's more reliant on a gun, and the way his postures and the way he, kind of moves around. Plus, he has a new sword. As Bio Rider, he can manipulate himself elementally and molecularly, if that's a word, and he's much more faster. Plus, he has this new sword which he can summon from his belt, which is the source of his power, and he can use it like a lightsaber, but he'll always use it as a last resort or a finishing move. Most of the time, he's using martial arts, and the action is still excellently choreographed. Kotaro, outside of costume, is still an excellent fighter, and I like how his fighting style is still consistent with how he fights in costume, which is, portrayed by a stuntman. Speaking of that, I recently found an interview with Kurata Tetsuo on reflecting back on being Kamen Rider, and he said that him and the stuntman spent a lot of time together working on the fight scenes, and the stuntman also spent time training Kurata. And at that same time, the stuntman was learning how to be more like Kurata himself in his portrayal of, Kotaro. Even as far as dressing like him, is doing his hair like him, which shows a lot of dedication to the acting craft, and the quality of the acting is reflected on this. And I like how the way how he assumes a stance, throws a punch, throws a kick, everything is consistent in and out of costume. This, along with Zyuranger, are the only series I have seen which does a good job of conveying this consistency. If you dispute these claims, I'm cool with that, and I'm still a newbie to the tokusatsu genre, especially Kamen Rider. And Koyama Rikia, even though he kicks a lot of ass as Takamura, he also kicks ass in his fight scenes as well, and he carries size like Raphael from Ninja Turtles. I really enjoy the quality of the action, but once his other modes are introduced, I do feel that it does become more predictable with how he handles certain situations. Plus, I don't like how he fakes getting hurt with instant transformations in certain moments, which I thought was a little too over the top. But I still think the action is good enough for a 9.5 out of 10. The music is still fucking awesome. Kurata may not sing the main theme song this time, but Miyauchi Takayuki, who also sang the Bioman series theme song, is also, awesome. I have not seen Soul Brain, but I have listened to the theme song of that series, and that song is really awesome as well. You don't really have to understand Japanese to really understand that this, his songs in general are masculine and awesome, and that he's just a fucking pimp. If you're the kind of person that's willing to get hooked on a series because of a theme song, this might be the one for you. It's very energetic, dark, optimistic, heroic, and masculine. And as for the background tracks, it still uses some songs from Black and some other, it also has some original ones, and image songs will be more prevalent in the second half. All I can simply say is, the music owns, which I give a perfect 10 out of 10. Well, here comes the part that some people may or may not want to hear, but, how it compares to Saban's Masked Rider, since, of course, this was the series that paved way for that show. I remember I enjoyed Masked Rider as a child. Yes, T.J. Roberts is a very terrible actor, much more horrible than the Power Rangers cast. But he was a very talented martial artist. But on YouTube, look up some of his other movies such as A Dangerous Place, The Power Within, and Magic Kid. Yes, his acting is beyond shitty. But I think for a teenager at that time, he showed some quality martial arts skills. But I understand that hardcore fans who saw the show, who were already familiar with Kamen Rider, and even Ishinomori Shotaro himself admitted to hating, the Saban's Masked Rider, since it went against what Kamen Rider was about and all that. And I'm cool with that. Sorry about that. Looking back, it is laughingly bad. It's, ha ha ha, that's so bad, but I wouldn't say it's near shitty bad as Dragon Ball Evolution or Legend of Chun-Li. But I felt without this series, I would not have eventually have gotten into Kamen Rider. But still, Kamen Rider Black RX is still a super awesome series. I don't think it's as good as the first season, but on its own, still good enough for a 9.4 out of 10. And if you want to see this series, get it from tokuzilla.me. And thank you for listening. And once again, you can find this series on tokuzilla.me. But it's not subbed, it's only raw. But still, please check it out. It's a really, really awesome series.